Hello listeners, welcome back to Luke's English podcast. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing fine. It is a grey and rainy and wet day here in my part of the world. Horrible conditions, but actually perfect conditions for sitting here and recording another episode of this podcast for learners of English. And yes, that is the idea for this podcast, which you probably have realised by now. The main aim here is to give you plenty of things to listen to help you do loads of listening in English. And I want to let you listen to a variety of things. Sometimes it's me talking on my own. Sometimes it's me talking with guests. It's very important that you listen to a range of different voices, different people, native speakers, non-native speakers, people using English. There's a big variety of English in the world. It's not just native speakers. Millions of people all around the world use English as the international language. So it's really important that you get to hear lots of different voices speaking English in their own way. The more you're exposed to, the better, I think. And a variety of different topics as well. Hopefully I can cover various different things, different topics in these episodes. Today on the podcast, it's a conversation episode, so you'll hear me in conversation with another guest. And today's guest is Siobhan Dodd. I first met Siobhan fairly recently, actually, when I was on her podcast. She does a podcast with a friend of mine called Alex. The show is called Following Through. I talked about it a few episodes ago. I mentioned that I've been on the podcast, and then there was that tangent about the phrasal verb to follow through and all the different meanings it has. So that's when I first met Siobhan, when I was on her podcast. And I learned, in that moment when I met her, I learned that she is a sign language interpreter, which I think is fascinating. Sign language and a sign language interpreter. Do you know what sign language is? Sign language is that kind of visual language which has been invented to help deaf people communicate. I think that's probably the way to put it. I'm talking about people who are unable to hear. And so, language, normal spoken language, is not really something that they can use at all. And so sign language has been invented to help those people. And I think sign language is fascinating. I love to see sign language in action. It involves using all these different gestures, using the hands, right, to communicate very complicated things. You see simultaneous translations in sign language. You see that on TV sometimes. Sometimes there'll be someone doing the sign language on the screen. And sometimes you see it live if there's an event or something where there's someone doing the sign language simultaneously by the side of the stage. You just see people in public speaking in sign language to each other, like someone on the train, like you see a couple of people on the train. It is fascinating to see the fluency with which people do the different signs, the complexity of it, and the expressions on people's faces as they are communicating with each other using sign language. So I think it's a fascinating thing, and I don't really know very much about it, to be honest. I don't know about the system of sign language. I don't know how you learn it. I don't know how it works. I don't really know very much about it. So I'm very much looking forward to talking to Siobhan. And in fact, I'm recording this introduction just before the interview begins. The interview is scheduled to start in just a couple of minutes. So I'm just doing this quick introduction first. It's one of those introductions before the actual conversation. So I'm very curious to talk to Siobhan all about the world of sign language, how you actually learn it, what the system of the language is like. Does it have grammar, for example? Do you conjugate verbs and things like that? Are there tenses in sign language? How does it actually work? How do you talk about the past, the present, the future? What about things like intonation and like sarcasm? Is it possible to express something like sarcasm or contrastive stress? I've got loads of questions about it. And hopefully you will be curious about sign language too. Essentially as a language learning podcast, although I don't always talk about language learning on this podcast, but this is a podcast for learning English. We have a special interest in language and how languages work and language learning and communication. So hopefully this will be an interesting way to explore the subject of language, but in a different mode today, the mode of sign language. So any questions you have about sign language, have a little think about them right now. How many different sign languages are there in the world? Are there different accents in sign language? Or any other questions that you could think of? Just hold them in your brain, then you can perhaps try and search for answers to those questions. All right then, so I'll now let you listen to the conversation which I'm about to have, and here we go.
So a sign language interpreter is somebody who hears a language and they translate it into another language. So either there'll be like a hearing person who's sorry, I have a tendency to sign when I'm talking about signs, so you'll notice I do a lot of that, which is no good for the people listening, but great for the people watching.
Right.
So an interpreter hears English and they translate it into sign language, into BSL, which is what I do, which is British Sign Language. And similarly, if a deaf person is signing, I will translate it into English. It's what we call voiceover. So we will voice over what they're saying. And that's basically it. But it's not just that, actually. We also do written translation as well. So sometimes a deaf person will sign a load of stuff at me and I will write it up, because it's really important that not a lot of people are aware of this, but English and BSL are so different that actually the level of English for a lot of deaf people is not quite to the same sort of level as hearing people, if that makes sense, because the grammar is
Yeah.
so different. And the expectation in the professional world is to have, all your tenses perfect and to have a real formal professional level of English. So often as interpreters, we will take hearing English and just make it a bit more understandable, or we'll take sort of maybe just perfectly good English, but just make it a little bit more hearing, a little bit more corporate and professional. So
Right.
that's some things what an interpreter does.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure that listening to this, I do have interpreters as well. I know that I
Mm,
do. People who interpret, from English to another language and back again.
yeah,
So that it might be a similar experience. I mean, is it?
yeah.
Do you think? Is it?
Yes,
Is it
it is.
comparable?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like my
Yeah.
postgraduate diploma was in interpreting and translation. And we actually had to study some of the interpreting and translation texts for spoken languages. Like your listeners probably be familiar with, like Cecilia Wadnesko and Mona Baker and all these geeky translation linguists. We had to study them because it is the same principles. And for some reason, people think it's not when it comes to sign. They
Mm.
think that it's just literally word match sign, and that's not the case. And a lot of your listeners will be aware of this. It's just translation and interpreting is so much more than that. There's so much processing and there's so many different layers and things to be aware of.
Yeah, that is a common misconception about
Mm,
different languages, in fact, about translation or interpreting, and also about language learning, that it's just a
yeah,
question of just replacing all the words, the individual words, with the words from the other language, and then Bob's your uncle. But
yeah.
there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
Mm,
So now I can ask you maybe why. So why did you become a sign language interpreter, and also how? But first of
right.
all,
Yeah.
why?
Why? Okay. Well, it started when I was 17. I started learning sign because I was working part time with kids with disabilities. And I saw like some of them were autistic, some Down syndrome, and they were using Makaton. I don't know if you've heard of Makaton. It's what Mr. Tumble uses in CBBS.
No.
And it's what a lot of people use if you've got learning disabilities. So it's like a basic form of sign. It's not a language, it's a communication system. And I was interested in this, so I thought, oh, I'll learn BSL. I'll book onto an evening course of BSL. So I did. And at the same time, I was also choosing my options for university. Initially, I wanted to be an actress, darling. So I applied for all these drama schools, didn't get in. And my mum was like, this isn't going very well, is it? Do you want to consider some more options? And I was like, oh, if I must. And I found one course at the University of Reading that was theatre arts education and deaf studies. Very niche. It's closed
Wow.
down now. It's that niche.
Theatre arts, education, and deaf studies.
Yeah. Yeah. The education was like one module. We didn't do much on that, but it was basically creating theatre for deaf and hearing audiences. So I then did an evening class in BSL. I realised I liked it, so picked this course, got into that course, and then from the age of 18, I was getting drunk with deaf people, basically, all the
Well,
time.
yeah, this is often the best way to learn a
It
language, isn't
really
it? You
is.
just get drunk with the people who use it, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a fast track.
It really is. Like, honestly, the first night I got to university, I'm 18 years old. I've left my mummy and daddy for the first time. I'm all, and I'm sat in the kitchen in my halls of residence, and I'm the only hearing person. And I'm like, oh, and I had level one sign, which at the time I thought I was fluent.
Yeah,
But looking back now, I mean, God, even now I go, oh God, can I do this? I have crisis of confidence. But the more you know, the more you realise you don't know, right?
yeah. So what's
um,
that like then,
yeah,
hanging around with loads of deaf people? You
great.
know, yeah,
I mean, we don't leave the pub. Like,
yeah,
it's great.
right,
Like, honestly, the deaf, like, so yeah. So I then carried on getting drunk with deaf people, and in my 20s, I would go to deaf pub a lot, and it's hilarious because the pub landlord is like, "It's time, we've got to go, last orders," and everyone's just chatting. And occasionally they turn the lights off, but you still find a way. And if they knew I was hearing, they'd be like, "You've got to tell them, you've got to tell them, it's time." And
yeah, yeah.
so I would just pretend to be deaf as well, so none of us have to leave the pub. It
Oh,
was great.
right,
Sorry.
yeah,
So how? So the how? I'm very long winded.
it's
So
great.
yes, I went to university and got drunk with deaf people a lot. Like that. That was great. But I didn't manage to get my level two because they cocked up the teaching. So I then went on to be a kids entertainer and had to do like evening classes to get my proper sign language qualifications. Because after uni, all I had was getting drunk with deaf people experience, but not. I didn't actually have the next level up qualification to go and work with deaf people. So eventually I got my level two, level three. Then I was working as they call it a communication support worker. So you're
Mm.
interpreting in colleges and schools and stuff like that. And then you qualify. Then I did the postgraduate diploma and qualified as an interpreter in 2011.
Okay, how many different levels are there? Then you mentioned level one, level two.
Well, back then there was five, I think. So it used to be they do level one, level two, NVQ3, and then they would do NVQ. Then they went to NVQ6. So for some reason, five doesn't exist. Don't know why.
Okay,
NVQ6 language, and then NVQ6 interpreting. But at this point, I did the postgraduate. So I did a postgraduate certificate and then a postgraduate diploma. And it took me 10 years in total from
wow.
level one to qualifying as interpreter. It's hard work.
Yeah, how did you actually do it then? Obviously, there's getting drunk with deaf people, which is
Mm,
going to, just naturally lead to you
yep.
practicing a lot.
Yep. That's the best bit.
That's the best bit. I
Yeah.
suppose it's similar to learning any language.
Yeah.
What was your process then?
Well, evening classes and practicing. So, really, the key for me was deaf friends, having really good deaf friends who helped me through it.
Yeah,
And occasionally you do the icky thing like, oh, I hate doing this, but probably some of your listeners may do these sort of exercises where, like, you listen to something and you practice interpreting it and you film yourself. It's awful. Or like you get a bit of newspaper text and you practice translating it. I don't know if anyone else does this. Oh my God, it's really icky. And then you have those awkward kind of self-reflection moments of, okay, what have I done wrong? What have
hmm,
I done right? But it's mostly just putting yourself in the situation where you have to use it. Um,
yeah,
yeah, and honestly, it's such a hard process. Like I have a lot of respect for everyone out there learning a language because the crisis of confidences that you go through. You probably have this with French, right? Trying to learn
yeah.
French.
Oh yeah, God, yeah.
You feel horrible.
It's not just learning this system, this
Mm,
new system, all the vocab and grammar and the pronunciation and everything,
mm,
but you're just constantly doing battle with your own motivation and your own
yeah,
self-esteem, which is like such an important part of it that you can
yeah,
feel, there's this learning curve where when you first learn a language, you feel great and you think you're brilliant, and then
mm,
reality slaps you in the
yes.
face. And
That was me, age 18.
yeah, that's when you
Yeah,
ended up in that halls of residence
yeah.
with loads of deaf people
I
with
was at
level
that
one.
point. Yeah,
Yeah. And then you realize how actually how awful you are. And then you kind of like knuckle down and do some work, and you gradually kind of claw your way back to a decent, respectable level. But yeah, it's constantly a process of thinking that you're good, and then having your confidence knocked, and then having to carry on. And often it's the people who are able to recover from those knocks that actually go on to become really good language learners, I think.
Yes.
What
Yes.
was your motivation then? What is it? What was it that allowed you to have your confidence knocked and just keep going?
I don't really know because friends, I suppose, deaf friends. Yeah, and
Yeah,
actually it became my job. So
right.
it literally like I then started doing it for a job and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is my income."
Yeah,
So I have
yeah,
to do it.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
interesting what you were just saying about that process because do you find that also relates to stand-up comedy?
Oh yeah.
Oh, massively. And just
Oh
this last week,
God.
I've been in such a dip with the comedy, and I've been like, and just what you're saying. Oh God, you have those moments where you're like, I'm amazing, and then you're like, oh no, I'm not.
No, I'm awful. Yeah, no,
I'm
I'm in a
awful.
big dip like that at the moment with comedy, where I'm
Oh,
just like,
really?
ugh. Yeah,
Same, same.
yeah. It's tough, isn't it? Because you just
Mm,
have a few gigs where it's not even like gigs that have gone badly. It's
mm,
just more like you haven't hit that kind of high that you have had in the past, and then by comparison, what's happening now is just very unsatisfying.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
getting away from the point there a
But
little
that
bit.
is, but it's very real. It's very similar. The learning process is really similar to that. I think it's just. I think it relates to everything you do in life, isn't it? That
Probably
cycle you go
yes.
through. The Maslow's cycle of competency. The consciously incompetent, unconsciously incompetent. Do you know that one where it goes round in a
Yeah,
cycle?
yeah, and there's the
Consciously incompetent.
Dunning-Kruger effect as well. Do you know about that
Oh,
one?
oh
Which
no!
is
Which
that
one's this?
it's a line which is more or less what I described before, where you
Mm,
start out very high. It's like your confidence and your versus time. Is it confidence versus
mm.
time or ability versus time? Hold on a minute.
Oh,
I'm just googling it.
yeah.
Dunning-Kruger effect. Uh, Let me have a little look. Okay. Now it's all my results are in
Oh.
French. All my Google results are in French.
Of
I
course,
keep
bloody
translating it.
France.
I know. I keep translating it back to English, but it keeps coming back in French. I'm going to have to translate this. So you've got
Mhm.
okay, confidence on the left and
Okay.
competence. So your skill level on the right. So from at the
Ooh.
beginning you are a beginner, and then at the end you're an expert, and at the bottom
Mm,
you're low or weak, and at the top
mhm.
you're brilliant. And when you start, your confidence goes shooting up to this
Yeah.
peak, which is the mountain of ignorance,
That makes sense.
right? And then you've got the in French chute de la réalité, which is like I guess the
Shit.
fall of reality, right?
Yeah.
Where you come flying down to the valley of humility, right? So it's like a big peak, and then you come sliding down into the valley of humility, and then
Mm,
there's like a more gradual rise back up to more or less the same point you were at the top of that mountain, where it's very gradual
mm.
climb of where you evaluate yourself and you come face to face with reality, and you slowly claw your way back up to a more consolidated, realistic skill level at the end of this
Aha.
process. But it's like big rise, big fall, and then a gradual improvement. But I think that
Okay.
that process of rise and fall improvement, rise, fall, improvement is a repeated thing that
Yes, I was
happens
gonna
again and
say,
again.
because that's the same with the competency cycle, it goes round and round, it's like which is a bit annoying, isn't it? Because it would be nice. I mean, do you think as much as it's repeated, does it eventually is it always constantly upwards at least?
Yeah, I
A
suppose
little
so.
bit.
Yeah, it must do.
Yeah.
If you're willing to keep going, then yeah, gradually it sort of overall goes up and up and up, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it can be a bit of a punishing cycle, can't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it really pays off if you manage to keep going and you
Yeah.
find the reasons to keep going, and you just sort of doggedly refuse to give up.
Yeah.
Is often the way, and people I've met who've learnt English to a really good level had
Mm.
that in them somehow. They had some
Wow.
thing that pushed them forwards, either because they just loved it. So, for
Yeah.
example, for you, maybe you just love sign language and it's
Yeah.
fun to do it, but also because you were you'd invested a lot of time into
Yes.
it, and at some point you get to a point of no return where,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you said,
Yeah.
it's your job now, so you've got kind of got no choice. And
No
also,
choice.
when it's your job, you do invest time into your
Mm,
work, and
yeah. Because you
so
have to.
there's yeah,
Yeah, and
exactly,
also
yeah,
the people. Like you have people in your life who are deaf, who you love, and or friends that you meet. They're great people, so you want to, you want to do it for them,
yeah.
and be able to converse with them. And yeah, and like Deaf Pub, it's funny because I remember one of the only times I ever kind of got really scared. I went when I first moved to London, 2006, and I had been getting drunk with deaf people in Reading. Perfectly, I knew lots of deaf people there. Come to London, I walk into Deaf Pub, and I had to kind of pluck up the courage to make conversation with people and just be like, "Oh, hello, my name's," because I was hearing and I was only level 2. I didn't feel very confident. Oh, this is a great sign. I'm going to show you this sign. It's confident. So it's a letter C, and it slides upwards when you're feeling confident, and it slides downwards when you're feeling not confident.
Okay, so the letter C, you kind of
Yeah.
make a letter C with your fingers and you
Yep.
press it against your chest,
Yep.
and if the letter C rises up towards towards your chin, that
Yep.
means I'm feeling confident. If the
Yep.
letter C drops down
Down.
to the belly, that means I'm
Yeah.
not feeling confident.
And I've seen deaf people that can really play around with it, where they go, "Oh yeah, that person," whoa, whoa, like take it up above their heads if they've got a really big head. That's just if they're like playing with language, like how we would play with words. But anyway, this day at Deaf Pub, I was low confidence, and I walked in, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna get myself a drink, I'll get a packet of crisps, I'll chat to someone, and for the first time, only time ever in my life, I sat there, I looked around. I might have maybe said to one person, "Oh, do you know so and so?"
Yeah.
No, I was like, "Oh, okay," and then I left. And
Oh.
I called my boyfriend at the time, now my husband. I was like, "I can't do it. I've left. I've left. I haven't stayed and had a conversation. I've just got scared." And I don't know if any of your listeners have been in the same situation where they've maybe tried to put themselves in a situation speaking English and practicing their English, and have just got scared or just had an attack of confidence. And it's a horrible feeling. But then, a couple of years later, I go back to that deaf pub. I'm there till 6 in the morning. We go on to several clubs. In fact, I think I did a binge that lasted till 5 p.m. the next day, um, at Deaf Pub, and I really got into the party fabric of that particular community. So it's
Oh, great.
really worth persevering, but it's so hard at the start.
Is it common for someone who is hearing, as you
Hmm.
say, to learn sign language to this level?
Yeah, I know a lot of interpreters who they've not got deaf family. They just, through some walk of life, they've found sign language. I remember someone once said to me when I was training, "You don't choose interpreting, it chooses you." um,
Right.
and I suppose that's true. We all sort of fall into it somehow. But there are people who don't have any sort of deaf people in their lives. They just, put their head down and train to become an interpreter. And it is
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. So tell me about the system of sign language. You mentioned
Hmm.
BSL, that's British Sign Language.
Yes.
Are there a lot of varieties of sign language?
Yes, so it's not. A lot of people think it's universal. That's same across the world, but it's not. Every country has their own sign language. You've got langue de signe, I think, and your is French. That's the sign for French, by the way, which is the
Well,
twiddly moustache.
a little
Yeah,
twiddling a moustache is the
it
sign
is.
for French.
I know it's not.
Really?
Yeah, it's not very. Deafness. BSL doesn't have any political correctness. Basically, it's a
Really?
very direct language. So,
Yeah. No,
sorry.
that's great. I don't think any
Yeah,
French person is going to be upset by that.
they're
Like
not. Okay.
twiddling your moustache is a
Yeah.
French thing. That's
I don't know.
awesome.
I don't know what the French sign for England is. It could be terrible. It could be
What's
really
the
derogatory.
BSL? What's the BSL sign for English person?
England. Now, my mum really mocked me when I was first learning it, and I said, "Oh," and I learned two signs for Ireland. She's Irish, and I was like, "Ireland. I've never seen anyone use this sign, but it's a lovely. It's the harp."
As
Um,
if you're playing a
as
harp.
if you're playing a harp. But honestly, I've never, ever since like years ago, I only saw that sign ever used once. So I don't
But
think it's used. The other one is that.
That's one sign for Irish.
That's one sign for Irish. The other sign is that.
Another sign is like flicking something off your shoulder.
Yeah, which I don't. Yeah, probably isn't as ideal. I don't really.
Why would
Or
that
there's
be
this one.
Irish?
I don't. Well, I don't know. I don't know.
So there's
Or
there's
there's
that
this one.
flicking something, or there's what's that? You're
That's
doing
like a
something else.
little leprechaun dancing onto your hand.
A little leprechaun dancing
Yeah,
on the back of your hand, so it's like the
yeah,
legs of the leprechaun jumping
yeah.
up and down on the back of your hand.
Ireland.
Little
Yeah,
leprechaun, yeah.
leprechaun. But when I told my mum these signs, and then she went, "What's England?" And I was like, "That," and she went, "Ha ha ha! What a silly, anally retentive little sign."
So the sign for England is like you put you point one of your fingers forwards, place the other finger on top of it, and rub it up and down a little bit.
Yes, it's the letter E. So that's the letter E, and you're just rubbing your E a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Just rubbing your E.
Yeah,
But it's
as you do.
different. In Canada, I remember being in Canada and meeting a deaf person, and we couldn't really converse because Canadian Sign Language is different. I'll tell you why those languages are all different in a minute, but his sign for England was this. It was like you're just like a Mountie, like those colonial soldiers that would do that
on a horseback,
on a
like
horseback. Yeah,
holding the front of the saddle and riding on a horse. That's their sign for English person.
Yeah, like something like that. I think. Yeah. So it all varies, but it's interesting as apparently back in 1800s there was a guy called Thomas Gallaudet or some sort of deaf pioneer who wanted to like develop sign language as a language, and he comes over to England and he's like, "Hey, I've got this sign language. Do you want to come and teach me yours, and we can create something amazing?" And apparently the English went, "Nope, this is our language. You're not having it. Nope, not telling you." They put their hands behind their back. They didn't share it. So then he went,
Wow.
"Oh, all right." Went to France, and the French went, "Yeah, sure." So they sort of created this one-handed sign language alphabet, which is used pretty much every other country apart from England, Australia, and New Zealand. Use the one-handed sign alphabet. The languages are different because there's differences even within regions. There's like with signs, there's regional variation. So there's also like variation across the world, but the languages are more similar. They've all got this kind of similar kind of one-handed alphabet. Whereas Britain, because we didn't share, we're stuck with, you're in the pub and you're doing everything with two hands. You can't hold your drink. Very inconvenient. So
you can't
sign.
You can't hold a pint and sign at the same time. You have to put your drink down.
You do.
Yeah, God.
Nightmare. And then when the bar staff are trying to get you out, it's terrible because they can steal it.
Right, of course. You've got to put your pint down to say, no, hold on a minute. And then they've got it. Yeah. So there's Canadian Sign Language. There's the French one you mentioned. There's British Sign Language. There's American Sign Language too. Yeah. And what, like in China and Japan, in Russia, places like that, they've all got their own sign languages.
They have.
So it's just like other languages then, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. Although it's a lot easier for so deaf people are brilliant at picking up other sign languages, so they can adapt very easily. I've told you about this sign before, haven't I? Where you turn dials on your chest.
Yeah,
that's like adapting yourself to meet others' needs. It's a great sign. Kind of really says more than you can with words.
As if you've got dials on your chest, like volume controls or something, and you're adjusting the dial, these big dials in the middle of your chest, in order to adapt yourself or adjust yourself.
Yeah, it's a great sign, isn't it?
It is. It's really good. It's really good. Do you think that some of these signs are easy? I wonder if sign language is perhaps easier to remember than other languages because of that physical movement. Because studying, teaching a language, one of the things I've noticed is that there's a lot of importance in memorizing and mnemonics. And, when you learn about mnemonics and the ways that we remember things, connecting a new word, for example, to something else can make it more vivid and can make it more memorable. So connecting a concept to a physical movement, like adjusting the dials on your chest or the sea rising and falling. I mean, already I've remembered those perhaps more effectively than I would if I was remembering like abstract words for those things. in another language, like if I was learning, I don't know, something like Turkish or something,
Mm.
I might not remember the word for confident and unconfident and adapting yourself, so I wonder if those physical movements somehow are easier to remember.
I think they
I
can
don't
and they
know.
can't because sometimes they're not attached to a word. So you get some signs that are called multi-channel signs where there's not really a simple translation. It's more like, I can't think of an example, is this, like that is FUD, which there's a sound that deaf people say when they do it, FUD. And that means like, oh, as if. You know what I mean? It's not got very clear translation.
Just
Like
sort
FUD.
of
Like
putting your
do your
hand
hands
across
like
your chest,
FUD.
your
FUD or,
two fingers across your chest like
yeah.
that.
There's quite a
It's
lot of
like,
signs like that.
so it's expressing some idea of like, I don't believe it, or
Yeah.
incredulity, like, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
like
Um,
fun or
yeah, that's
oh
not,
really? Mm,
yeah, that's more of an abstract sign. That's not a literal expression of the thing. Unlike
yeah,
adjusting the dials is obviously a
yeah.
much more of a literal expression.
But
But that,
it's hard to translate. Like if someone's doing that, like that's there in BSL. But if you were putting that into English, you'd be like, oh, and I was adjusting myself to meet the needs. It's not got a very clear translation. And I'm sure that
yeah,
must happen across lots of languages where there's something that just is encapsulated beautifully in this language, but just doesn't go easily into that language.
yes, 100%. There's loads of that where there's,
Mm,
yeah, a concept that is expressed with a word in a certain language, but
mm.
let's say in English, that direct translation doesn't exist, and so there's almost like a hole in your mind where this concept lives, but you don't have the
Yeah,
word for it.
yeah,
I'm sure something like following through in
yeah.
English is a similar case. Like, I wonder how people describe that in other languages.
Yeah, so I've
Um,
been wondering about this because we're doing for our season finale of Following Through, we're going to do get interpreters on, and it's going to be myself and another fantastic interpreter podcaster called Hayley Brown. We're going to talk about how we became sign language interpreters, and I was thinking, oh, how do I sign following through? And this is an interesting one because actually it's got two meanings, like you discussed in a previous episode, didn't you?
yeah.
Because there's following through, as in, right, you could do this, which is like resilience. It's like you're putting your gloves on, ready for pro action. So resilience and then continuing. You could do the sign for continuation because you've carried on with something. So following through, or you could do like an arsehole and following through, like the shit coming out of an arsehole.
So wait a
So
minute, an asshole is like like the bottom of a
no, not
clenched
really,
fist.
not really. Well,
No,
that you can do that for anal. That's
yeah.
bum. Um,
What like as if you're squeezing someone's
bum.
bum. That's the word for
Yeah, that's
bum.
bum. That's bum. Yeah, I won't go into too many swear words because there's a thing where hearing people always say, "Oh, teach us the swear words," and actually, for me as a deaf ally, it's not my place to teach the swear words. So I would always say, "You got to ask a deaf person," and a deaf person
Okay.
might say, "No, you're not worthy of the swear words." They hold the
Yeah.
key. They hold the key to that power. But I can tell you, bum. That's fine.
Okay. We always want to learn the swear words when we're learning
Yeah,
another language. It's always like the thing if you're in the pub with someone and you're trying to learn their language. Oh, what's the word
yeah,
for, like bum or something? Yeah, they're often the first things we learn. So yeah, okay, that's interesting. So we're just talking about the fact that yeah, there's sometimes a concept that is expressed very nicely with a
mm,
sign that perhaps in words you don't have. But
yeah.
so one thing I was curious about is that does sign language have grammar? Does it have can you conjugate verbs into the past, the present, or the future? Do you have passive forms
Ah.
in sign language? To what extent is there sentence structure in sign language?
There is a totally different grammatical system to what you have in English, and that's what people don't realize. I think they think so. They feel like they're with a deaf person, maybe at the GP. They haven't bothered to get an interpreter, and they go, "Here's a leaflet," and it's like, no, deaf person. Well, some deaf people will be able to understand that, but there's a lot that won't make any sense to them because the language is totally different. So the best example is in English, you would say, "What is your name?" In BSL, you'd go name, you, what. So it's like topic, comment. That's the uh, that's the kind of how you
Hmm.
would summarize the structure. Topic, comment. In terms of tenses, there isn't actually a clear way of showing past tense. So, for example, walking. you can't say walk, like you won't go walking like you sign ing. That's you don't that doesn't exist. So you
Yeah.
show it through the context of what you're saying. So, oh, yesterday walk, or like tomorrow will walk. Does that make sense? So you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
it
do
does.
it
Yeah.
with the other words around it. And that's where I think English can be so difficult for like really grassroots deaf people, because there just isn't that tense. There aren't those tenses. There aren't those. There's lots of unnecessary words in English.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah. Yeah.
far too many words which
Especially
you
when you
don't
get into
really
a lot of
need.
prepositions and phrasal verbs and
Yeah,
things like that. So if
yeah,
you,
and they're not there. They're not there in BSL.
yeah, you might say something like, I've been really getting into the idea of getting through to my next door neighbor. Or, it doesn't make much sense, but just like all of
Yeah,
those different prepositions and little parts of speech that sort
yeah,
of on their own don't seem to actually mean anything. But when
mm,
you put them all together, they create something which suggests, let's say, the idea of enthusiasm for communicating with someone.
yeah,
We have a lot of these weird delexicalized words in English that combine together to create quite meaningful things.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's
so
an
yeah,
interesting example, actually. So say that again, that sentence you did. I'm trying to think how I would interpret that.
I've been really getting into the idea of getting through to someone, right?
Yeah, if I
So
was into,
basically, that's two
oh,
phrasal.
impossible.
It's two phrasal verbs basically to
Yeah.
get into something and to get through to someone.
So you might be like thinking, interested, maybe contact someone.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
often when you're interpreting, you'll get hearing people who are going on and on like this, and it's like, blah, 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 and it doesn't make any sense, because with sign language we deal with meaning. Probably the
yeah,
same for a lot of spoken languages as well. You're dealing with meaning, and so often people aren't really saying anything.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
you
they're
can do
putting
that.
extra
In
words.
English, you can kind of waffle without really saying anything, right? You can
Yeah,
say, "Well, one of the things that has certainly been an aspect of the consideration which is necessary for taking
I'll try.
part
I'll
in
try
the
and sign this.
involvement of, yeah, the involvement of a process of certainly taking into account the various factors of the well, certainly the primary, maybe secondary aspects of part of this feeling would be, if I may be so bold, yeah, I didn't really say anything, did I? Then
Yeah, sorry, I'm still translating you. Yeah,
are
nothing.
you able to? So sign language can do that, can it? Can it kind of just waffle without saying anything?
Um,
Because you say it's very
yeah.
focused on meaning, everything's very probably quite concrete.
Okay, so what I did just then is you said words, and I found signs that matched the words, but I didn't come to any kind of meaningful interpretation, because I
Yeah.
didn't. Because what the really good interpreters do, they hold back and they wait for the person to get to their point, and
Yes.
then they put it all into a beautiful bit of meaningful sign. But I get too
Yeah.
scared often to do that, and I go, "No, there's too much talking. I'm just gonna put it out here and see what you want to do with that information." But yeah, I definitely. But what I might do sometimes, is I'll do that waffle, and then once they get to the point, I would then I'll just do a quick paraphrase where I'd go, "Oh, so
Yeah.
he means this."
Yeah. Yeah. Very
But
sort of pragmatic, very pragmatic
yeah.
language.
But
Um,
hopefully your listeners could get some like heart from this, that actually don't worry if you're hearing a lot of waffle. You might start to think, "Oh God, I'm not understanding it. It's me. It's me." It's not. Sometimes the person is talking rubbish, and it's not you. It's them.
yeah. 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 Um, do you have nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs in sign language? Do you have parts of
Yeah,
speech?
we have nouns. Nouns is just the objects, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like yeah, forgetting what basic English language. Oh, this is embarrassing.
Let's say if it's I'm trying to think of a good example of a word that in its different forms. Like, do you have uh, application, to apply, applicable? You
Oh,
know what
that's
I
very.
mean?
Oh, right. Okay.
You have different
So,
parts of speech across the same word family.
ooh. Possibly not. So no, they would have different meanings. So application, what you're talking about, like
This
no.
might be, sorry, this might be a bad example. I'm trying to think of
Mm.
communication, communicate, communicative. Okay, let's do communicate, right? So
Okay.
communicate, the verb, communication, the noun,
Yeah.
the thing, communicative, a communicative person. Let's go with those ones.
No. So within those, they would be different signs. So that's communication, which is
Okay.
just that's communication. But to communicate, that depends how you're communicating. So you might communicate. So you're saying a message, or you're doing a mass email. Communicate, or you're phoning around, or you're skyping. It would be how you're communicating. That would be the sign. Does that make sense? And the other one,
Okay. Yeah.
communicative, that would just be, oh, that person talk, 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 or lecture, or good communication, good. Like, do you know what I mean? You would show it that way.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah, I
wouldn't.
see.
So in sign, they're not from the same family because it's about the
Yeah.
meaning.
Because part of how English works is that you have prefixes and suffixes. You
Ah,
have morphemes, the way that words
yeah.
change based on the way that certain aspects of them can be modified.
Mm,
But no, you have to find other ways of expressing those
you
sorts of
do.
concepts
And there's a
with
lot of
signing.
productive morphology in sign. So there's a lot. Oh, I forgot I haven't used these words since I trained 10 years ago, or 13 years ago. Blimey. But there's a lot of, like, you watch deaf people, like really great deaf poets, and they have this thing called visual vernacular, which is a form of like deaf poetry, which is amazing. And you watch them and they play with signs and they create new signs out of different signs that come together. And that can
Yeah.
happen quite a lot. Like you can actually play quite a lot with language.
Very interesting. What
Mm.
about stuff like? So I'm going to just keep firing these questions at
Yeah,
you.
yeah, do.
So in English, a lot of meaning is conveyed with not just the grammar that you're using, the vocab you're using, and everything, but also the way you deliver it with your voice. So a lot of meaning is conveyed with sentence stress. So
Mm.
an example that I often give to my students is that sentence, which is, "I don't think you're stupid." Right now, you can stress different
Ah.
parts of the sentence. It means different things. I don't think
Ah.
you're stupid, but she does. I don't think you're stupid. Honestly, I don't think you're stupid. I think they're stupid.
Yeah.
I don't think you're stupid. You're just
Mm.
different. So is it possible do you have, let's say, sentence stress or contrastive stress in sign language?
So interestingly enough, earlier you mentioned facial expression, how when you see sign, you often see people using their facial expression. Now, actually, what happens on the face, that's called NMF, non-manual features, and it is part of our grammar. So actually,
Aha.
the way the eyebrows go can affect the whole meaning of a sign. So you would negate. So you might say like coffee and be like coffee. Like that shows that no, you don't really want the coffee. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Or
Yeah.
if you, or you just furrow your brows to create a question mark, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose sentence stress would be done on the face, or with negation, where you sign something and then go nah. So you're like, think you're stupid? Nah, like you might do that. Does that make
Right. I
sense?
see. Yeah,
Or
that
like,
does make total sense. Yeah.
you stupid? No, them, yes. you would you
Yeah.
would have to kind of throw in some more. The implied meaning would either be covered through the facial expression, or you might just have to throw in a bit of negation or just something extra to boost it.
A couple of extra signs.
Or emphasis. Emphasis, sorry. Because actually there is
Yeah.
a really great sign like anxious. So you'd be anxious, really anxious.
Like
Yeah.
holding your hand like it's a claw over your heart, and
Yeah. It's like
two
nerve.
fingers,
Or you might even do it. I've seen it actually on one hand, so a little bit nervous, really nervous,
it's like a
really
claw with
anxious.
one or two fingers tapping over your heart to suggest I'm nervous or I'm anxious.
Anxious, or and then if you're really worried, like really scared, that's scared. Um,
You do it with all of the fingers.
with all of the
That
fingers if you're
emphasizes it.
scared, yeah, like, or yeah, or if you're worried, you might go worried. Yeah, that's a little bit worried, but really worried. Just that there's more movement, so you can use emphasis.
the exaggeration of the movement is a way of emphasizing. With the way we in English, you might say that was absolutely fantastic. You use your voice, but in signing, you just make the sign language. You make the sign that you're doing a lot more emphatic with your body language. Make it bigger and faster, and
because I'm quite a dramatic person, I think that was quite an issue for me training, because I remember doing my first medical and my supervisor was like, yeah, you made that look a lot worse, because everything was big and I was probably too excitable and was really exaggerating everything.
I can imagine you've got to watch out for that if someone's giving like a medical diagnosis and it's like you've got a bad leg, you've got a terrible leg.
That's a great sign. That's a great example, actually. Bad. So that's the sign for bad. Your little finger.
One little finger raised, like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers.
Exactly. Bad. That's bad. But really bad. Two little fingers. Really awful. You shake them around like awful. So So that's a nice little sign to know.
That is interesting. So what English does with, as I've said, sort of using your voice, intonation, or stress. Or what we do with adjectives or adverbs to emphasize something. So not just, so you might have that's bad, and then if it's worse, that's really bad, or that's terrible, or that's absolutely terrible. So the way we modify with adverbs and with extreme adjectives in sign language, you do it by, let's say, just changing the sign a little bit, adding more to it and making it bigger, and using your facial expressions. Very interesting. Are there different, so in English, there are many different accents and dialects, right? So, for example, even within the UK, within British English, there are a variety of accents around the country and dialects, different words for the same thing. Is it the same in sign language?
It is. And this is something people don't realise. Like, already people think it's the same worldwide. And one of the questions I often get is it universal? It is not. Not only is it not even universal around the world, it's not universal around the country. Like, there are so many regional variations. And like, I have one of my best friends is from Birmingham. And I met him at uni, and my husband was actually talking about this yesterday when I told him about the podcast, how he learnt the sign toilet from my mate Roger. I know, was it from Roger? He learnt the sign toilet from somebody, some deaf person who was probably taking the piss, because nobody uses that sign.
So again, I'm going to have to explain for the audio listeners that the sign that you're demonstrating, which apparently nobody actually uses, is like a fist, which represents the bowl of the toilet, and you're the palm of your hand going over the top like the lid of the toilet. So, but nobody actually uses this sign for toilet then.
No one uses it. No one uses it. So somebody taught him that, but then Roger from Birmingham does that, toilet.
Which is like, wait a minute.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I forget this is audio. So you're taking your hand up to your cheek, and you're tapping it against your cheek as if you're going, oh, psst, I'm going to the toilet now. I want to be really subtle. I'm just going to the toilet. I'm just going to the toilet.
You got that, everybody?
You got that? I'm going to the toilet. Don't make a big thing out of it.
Tell anyone.
I don't want to shit myself and look on my podcast.
I think I've followed through. Don't tell anyone.
So that's the Birmingham sign for toilet. But then a lot of other people you take your sweary finger, your middle finger, and you rub it against your chest. Like that. So that's toilet. That's what most people use, toilet. Oh, no. Oh, sorry. Actually, no, it's this side. Oh, God.
It's the other side, yeah.
I am a professional, honest. It's early. Toilet. And actually, it really, like, it kind of blows your mind a little bit, because you think that you're going to learn this sign, it's going to be fine. But actually, it's different across regions. Even the numbers, like Birmingham, they use the opposite side of the hand for numbers, whereas I might do like 6 with my thumb, 7, 8, 9. In Birmingham, they have it like 7. I can't even do the shapes that they do in Birmingham for the numbers. It's really, I get cramp.
Wow,
Rummy
that's
numbers
amazing.
give me cramp. I think the reason for that is because back in the day, deaf schools existed in different parts of the country, and deaf people would mix in those groups. So therefore, the signs they developed were in that group, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why the regional signs were developed there. Now it's a lot more different. Like, deaf people travel everywhere. There's obviously Facebook and video calling, so people can mix a lot more. But I think it's the same with any language, isn't it? Your language is gonna match the people who you're with, and it's gonna evolve with them.
Yeah,
So if anything,
absolutely.
I think there's probably more regional variation in sign language than there is even in spoken language. Like, you know how we have accents and different slang. I
Yeah.
think that's even stronger in sign.
That's fascinating. Just what you said
Mm,
there, yeah, is just totally makes sense on the
yeah.
subject of accents as well. Just
Mm,
the idea of the reason that regional accents occur is
yeah.
because people accommodate to each other. People, you want to speak like the way that people speak in this area because that's who you identify with, and so you accommodate to that form of the language.
Mm,
Um, it's really interesting. Can I ask you before we finish? Can I ask you about some of your experiences as an
yeah.
interpreter? So you talked about the fact that you these days, because it's your job, right?
Mm,
This is your full time job.
yeah.
That you interpret in various situations. What are some of the most interesting interpreting jobs that you've done? If you can
Um,
talk about them.
so we sign confidentiality. That's like the most important thing because obviously we are someone's ears and eyes, and they're trusting us to be there. So I can't kind of go into any level of specific detail. Um, but I've been in every domain. Like you're a fly on the wall in hospitals, births, deaths, theatres with both sort of on stage for the audience and with deaf actors, TV sets, working with deaf people there, offices, social care. Haven't done police. Ugh, I don't fancy that. Or
No,
court. I'm like, that's too formal.
bit too, yeah, too formal
Yeah.
or too scary and dark, all that true
Too
crime stuff.
formal. Too
Too formal.
yeah. Too,
Yeah, because
yeah. Too formal. I
yeah.
think.
Hmm.
Yeah. I would. It's basically for me now at the stage of life I'm in where I'm like, I've got two small children and I'm knackered. I just want to work with people who I like, basically, and
Yeah,
who like me, and
yeah,
who I get on with, and because I know I can make sense for them. Because I don't know if this would apply to any of your listeners, but when you're using your second language and you're talking to someone who you're not sure if they get you, it really kind of adds an extra layer of stress. And I find then that my signing goes a little bit wrong because I'm self conscious and I'm worrying about it.
yeah,
Whereas if you really know someone and they know you can just relax and
yeah,
you've got the context of their work and you can really kind of do something with it. But
yeah,
I'm trying to
yeah,
think what I can talk about. I can probably tell you about Glastonbury
yeah.
because that
What
was
is?
public.
I need to stop you there and just we need to explain what Glastonbury is because there will certainly be
Ah,
quite a lot of people who won't know what that is.
Glastonbury is probably the UK's biggest music festival. Would you
It,
say, Luke?
it is definitely the UK's biggest, and it's in fact one of the biggest in the world, if not
Aha.
the biggest.
Yes.
It's yes, so it's an outdoor music festival, and it attracts the biggest names in music. And
Yeah.
name any of the biggest artists in music of the last 10 years, they will have done Glastonbury.
50 years, probably.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
like Beyonce, Taylor.
Yeah.
Has Taylor Swift done it yet?
I
I think
think
she
so.
has.
Coldplay do it like every year, pretty much.
Paul
They're just on
McCartney,
repeat.
Elton John. Just all the biggest
Lionel
names have
Richie.
all done it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
this huge music festival, outdoor music festival. It
Yeah.
takes place on a farm in the
Yeah.
southwest of England, and it's a massive event in music every year.
And this, I think
Right.
I can talk about because it's public. I was in the public, and and I was like, it's totally public. And I was volunteer, and so everyone volunteers for that. And this was in 2016, and I interpreted Fatboy Slim.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, which
Wait
I
a minute.
kind of
I'm imagining you interpreting Fatboy Slim is basically saying the same thing again and again and again, but
yeah,
faster each time,
it was
right?
mental. Yeah,
You interpreted his music.
I did. And I really went for it because obviously, I'm a performer as well.
Yeah,
And I'd heard I was going to do it. And I Googled the lyrics quickly of some of the songs and I was like, okay, fucking in heaven, fucking in heaven. And I sort of did fuck every single way, fucking in heaven, like depending on all the different angles of the fuck that you could
yeah,
do, like fucking in heaven. Because because it varies depending on position. That's the beauty of sign. And I was like, fucking in heaven, bad boy Slim. And I really went for it. And I become like a robot. And he was doing all these like robot sounds. And then there was like, do, 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 boo. And I literally like became a robot and I closed down on myself and then collapsed on the floor. And the deaf people loved it. It was great. One of them
Yeah.
actually said, I don't really know what it is, but I'm loving it. So
Yeah.
I should at some point. I need to be confident and put myself forward for doing more stuff like that because generally I don't because it takes a lot of work because you've got to translate the lyrics and you've got to kind of you've got to go for that. But actually, when I have done it, I'm able to put some of the emotion into it as a sort of singer and performer as well. So I think I need to do more of that. But that was probably one of my most memorable experiences interpreting Fat Boy Slim at Glastonbury.
Amazing. What a brilliant job. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm just
yeah,
looking
it's
at some of the
great.
lyrics for some of Fatboy Slim's work. It looks like, although you were able to physically interpret the lyrics to some of his more complex songs,
Mm.
some of his well-known tracks don't have too complicated lyrics. For example, Right Here, Right Now,
Oh,
if you
that was
remember.
quite easy. Yeah,
Yeah, because the lyrics
right
for that
here,
are literally
right
this:
now.
right here, right now,
Yeah, I
right
like
here,
that one. I
right
like
now,
that.
right here, right now, right here, right now. Next verse, right here, right
Yeah,
now, right
yeah.
here, and then
So that one was
there's
great.
yeah. So yeah,
Eat,
um,
sleep, rave, repeat was really hard because I had to be like, eat, sleep, rave, repeat, eat, sleep, rave, repeat. And I was doing it faster and faster and in different, and it became like a tongue twister where eventually I was like, oh, I'm raving, I'm sleeping, I'm eating, it was it got very complicated.
sounds brilliant. I'd love to ask you more about other jobs you've done, but I understand you have to be confidential about them.
Yeah, I just
I don't know. Have
because
you?
it's hard because I'm a comic. Obviously, I'm a comedian as well, and people often say, "Oh, do stuff about work," but it's like I just can't. No, you can't break that trust. It's not worth it. I don't want people to think I would do that because I can't.
You can't tell us about like any awkward moments or funny experiences you've had, I suppose.
No, but I could sort of talk generally about like I suppose things that are hard to translate. Like I remember in cooking, like I can't cook, and I've heard like when I've done various cooking jobs, um, someone saying like sweat the carrots. It's like sweat that what? How do you sweat a carrot? What are you talking about? So little things like that. It's like what? No, I'm just looking at them like what? Just speak English. What? And then when you don't understand something and you ask someone to repeat it and they don't, they just repeat sweat carrots, sweat the carrots, sweat the carrots. You're like, no, I don't know how you sweat a bloody carrot. So things
Yeah,
like that come up all the time.
right. Yeah, just some very specific things that are really difficult to express. Yeah,
Yeah.
sweat a
Yeah.
carrot. Yeah, that
Oh,
is silly,
gee.
isn't it?
It is.
Um,
I'm sure other languages have that sort of nonsense, particularly with cooking. Recipes have got all sorts of silly words that you don't need. This is why I
yeah,
don't cook.
yeah, right. Um,
Yeah.
so, what is the world like today for deaf people? Do you think? What's it like to be a deaf person today?
Uh, I think it's funny because I obviously have been a deaf ally since the age of 18 and I've got deaf friends and I think there's for a majority of hearing people they would view it as a disability, but the way I view it is as a linguistic and cultural minority. And I see deaf people as very empowered and I see them in high positions in workplaces and what's really great also there's more representation now on TV. So theatre and TV are suddenly kind of wanting to invest more in deaf actors, and there's more deaf comedians as well. So I think it's quite an exciting time actually to be deaf in the UK. I don't know about the rest of the world. I'm a bit concerned about America, to be honest, because
Well, we
Trump.
all are, aren't we?
Yeah, apparently he's closed the Department of Education and he's taking away statements for people with disabilities and
Oh
if that
God.
and that does worry me because obviously if that happens here, then I at the moment I do a lot of work with deaf professionals and I'm funded through a government department called Access to Work. So if we get a right wing government in who suddenly decide that deaf people don't need to work, um, then I'm out of a job. But that's not the
Yeah,
worst thing about that. The worst thing is that deaf people are out of jobs.
yeah,
And Yeah, so that's so we're great now in England, but there's always risks, and cut funding cuts to disability budgets. We're always at a threat of that,
Yeah.
and there's this real empowerment on one hand, but then sometimes there's little steps back that are coming up all the time. There's still barriers that deaf people are having to face all the time. Social media has made it better in a way because deaf people can kind of communicate with everyone, and finally people are subtitling their videos, not because of deaf people. They do it now because of their own promotional reasons, which annoys me a bit because hearing people are suddenly using subtitles because it suits them, and it's like, you should have been using it all along to make it accessible for them, bothers me.
Yeah.
Um, so there's still a lot of challenges, I'd say, for a deaf person. And actually, social media, it could present more challenges because whereas back in the day, deaf people would go to Deaf Club and you'd all meet there and it was all face to face and that was really their only communication. Now they don't necessarily need to do that. So the deaf pub, the deaf club is kind of not as used as it was. It's mostly older people that do that, which is a bit sad actually, because it's a great institution.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's a bit waffly. Does that answer your question?
No, that's great. No, that makes
Yeah.
total sense. I was also wondering about AI.
Ah, yeah.
What about that?
Yeah. Okay. This is an interesting one because part of my job as an interpreter is a deaf person will show me an email sometimes and say, "Oh, could you just spruce that up a little bit and make it like more fancy English?" AI is doing that now. So
Yeah.
yeah, so there could be instances where, oh, I'm not actually going to get employed for that job because
Yes.
AI is doing it. And also there is research going in to AI sign language translation. So me and my colleagues have all been like, "Oh God, okay, AI is
How
going to do sign language translation."
how would
Ah,
that be? That would be like an AI avatar on the
yeah,
screen doing the
yeah,
signing at the same time.
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Google Translation is pretty effective. I don't know if your listeners have used it much. Have you used it? Like, it's
Yeah.
getting better, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a bit
We're at
scary. I
this.
mean, but it is good. This is the thing. There's me saying, "Oh, it's a bit scary," but actually, here's the problem: I shouldn't really exist. Like, if the world was perfect, I wouldn't have a job because everyone would sign and everyone
Yeah.
could communicate. So I
Yeah.
am a necessary evil. So I shouldn't be the AI apps and these things that are going to help deaf people. Anything that helps deaf people is great because I'm a deaf ally and that's what I want. But then you
Yeah.
are also like, oh God, but
This is
yeah,
the thing about AI, though, isn't it? Is that
mm,
it's so great
yeah.
that it's going to destroy the world. Do you know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's so
because no one will have a
brilliant.
job.
Yeah, it's so brilliant that it'll solve all our problems, and then what will we do? You know,
Yeah,
that's what makes the world go round, isn't it? Really,
yeah,
problem
yeah,
solving and
yeah,
all of human endeavor is there to kind of solve
yes,
each other's problems, and that's how we make this whole thing work. But with AI,
yeah,
everyone's going to be just completely at a loose end.
yeah. What will
That's
we
one of the
do?
things. One of the things about AI is that it will take all of our jobs away and
Mm,
make our lives somehow meaningless. Um, but yeah, I can see that
yeah,
on one hand, for the deaf community, AI is a great thing because it can
yeah.
certainly help them communicate. But then for people like you who
Mm,
work as an interpreter, that's a challenge to your job. Yeah, it's similar for me.
yeah.
That as AI develops, English teachers might become redundant.
Will
You
they?
know,
What AI? Oh, because of translation. Because people won't bother learning English.
all sorts
Or
of reasons, all sorts of things.
yeah.
There's obviously the translation where people
Mm,
will essentially have that fish from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, just the thing you
mm,
stick in your ear, and it automatically translates everything in real time. There's
yeah.
that, but also even for podcasting, the thing I think I've talked about a few times is that
Mm.
more and more we're seeing AI generated audio content
What?
where people, yeah. So you could do it now
Whoa.
with Google's Notebook LM. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's
No.
so ChatGPT is a language model that's based on all the
Yeah.
language that they could ever find that they've shoved inside the machine.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
but Notebook LM is another language model. It's generative AI, but it uses input. So you can give it input. Let's say you feed it a PDF from your university. Your lecturer has given you a PDF. You feed it the PDF, and it will process everything within that PDF, and it'll sort of summarize it or turn it into bullet points, or it will give you a study plan for it, or it will do all these things to help you study with it. But one of the functions it has is the audio summary. And if you click on audio summary, and this is completely free, it will produce a 10-minute audio conversation between two podcast hosts. They're both completely AI generated voices. And it's stunning, like the realism of the conversation. They interrupt each other, they talk over each other, they react. Their voices have this intonation and stuff like that. And you can kind of like modify the conversation. You can say focus on this aspect, focus on that aspect, and basically you can create a 10-minute podcast episode based on whatever it is you've given to it. And it's incredibly realistic. I mean, it's not very good really yet, because it's not, you don't get that human element. It's not very funny. It's very, very, very generic, but it's incredibly, incredibly realistic.
The thing is, I think if we can get to a stage where AI is used to help us, because I think a lot of people are working too hard and they're trying to do jobs, particularly in the education sector. Everyone's like, right, school, there's no budgets, everyone's working too hard, they're trying to do the jobs of two people. If you can use AI to make that easier, sending an email, it takes ages to word an email, brilliant, use it for that. If it can be used to make jobs easier and for everyone to have a better work-life balance, then that's great, as long as it's not going too far. I mean, I think it can't replace humanity, it can't replace the human stuff. And the thing is, with like being an interpreter, deaf community and interpreters have a symbiotic relationship. We've been together since the beginning of time, and actually, like, I see my deaf clients as colleagues, and we get on and we kind of help each other, and it's just another human relationship in the workplace. And surely you can't replace that.
Yeah, well, this is what people always say, but I've got this sneaking suspicion that AI will get to a level of sophistication where it'll completely understand all of our codes, and it will be able to produce content that is entertaining and funny.
But there's enough. There's enough of people out there doing podcasts and audio content. Why would anyone need to listen to a robot when there's so many humans doing it?
Because they will be able to, they'll just type in, right, give me I've got a 20-minute journey to work. Give me a 20-minute conversation about ducks, because I love ducks, and I want you to teach me 10 duck-related idioms, and also I want there to be a joke every 30 seconds.
I mean, trying to wade through that, you'd be like a duck out of water.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on, give me a duck pun. Give me a duck pun.
I don't know. I would be absolutely. I don't know. Something about quacking.
I know.
I'd be all quacked out. I'd be completely duct tape. I don't know. I've got nothing. I'll have to ask ChatGPT to come up with completely. I think we'd all be completely quackers if we were to do that. And I don't know. The fact is, even it would be free, so they wouldn't even have to send you the bill afterwards.
Hey!
There you go. There's a bill related joke.
He's there.
So people will be. It might become preferable because people will be able to define exactly what they want, and it'll give them exactly what they want, and it'll, they can choose what voice it's in, what accent it's in, the speaking speed, everything. So who knows? Maybe it will actually be better, but we're a little way away from that at the moment.
It won't affect us. It might affect our children, but we'll be dead by then.
But
so whatever.
We'll be dead. It doesn't matter.
When it affects us.
No, who cares? Look, it's been really interesting talking to you and finding out about sign language and stuff. What are some of your, just before we go, what are some of your favorite signs that you could perhaps teach me and that we could describe to my audience? How would you sign Luke's English podcast?
So you would spell your name, Luke, although what I like to do when people have the name beginning with L, I like to do a nice big L, because that's actually like American Sign Language is the letter L, and it's really nice. So I'll go
just
Luke,
holding up
Yeah, just holding
Holding
up
up
an
your
I think it'd be lip pattern Luke. You'd have to spell it first, but then after that you just go Luke, English, podcast. Oh,
so
I should tell
podcast
you.
is like,
I think
yeah.
so. I think it is. I need to clarify this with Def HQ because
This
it
is
doesn't come
holding
up.
up a microphone.
Yeah,
It's like holding up a microphone to your mouth. That's
podcast.
podcast.
Yeah, podcast.
Brilliant.
There might be other signs for it, but I should tell you about sign names actually. So what you do in the deaf community, so you don't have to spell your name every time. You get given a sign, so it's something that encapsulates your personality.
Mm.
So for me, when I first got to uni, my mate Roger gave me about 13 sign names before we settled on the one that would be appropriate to use for lectures. So I was Siobhan, shit, because I was always announcing when I was going for a poo.
Wait a minute.
Siobhan.
That name was the word for shit?
Oh yeah, but I shouldn't be teaching you that. But yeah,
Oh, yeah,
shit.
because
Shit, because
yeah, right. But
that's the deaf people are the cult. Oh, you got that one for free, guys. Oh, that was
just
naughty.
remember my audio listeners as well, that if we do a sign, we need to
Oh, I'm
describe it
so
as well.
sorry, audio listeners. I'm terrible at
Okay.
thinking about you. I do love
But
you.
if
I do love
everyone's
you still
don't know if everyone's noticed, but I've been trying to get the descriptions in
because I
as
keep
much as I can.
signing.
So
Um,
anyway, the first name that Roger suggested was a name relating to the word shit, because you were always going to the toilet.
and announcing when I was going for shit.
You were always announced. If you did, you would announce it. Okay, everybody, I'm now going to go to the
Yeah,
toilet.
toilet. I'm going to the toilet. To that sign
Right,
again.
there we go again from Birmingham. All right,
From
guys.
Birmingham,
Um,
toilet. And then I would
yeah.
I remember that first night being up with deaf people, and I kept telling them when I was farting, and my mate Roger went, "I'm deaf. You don't need to tell me."
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I had then the sign for fart, and we went through about 13 until eventually we went for this, which basically what I'm doing now, guys, is I'm holding my hand up like I'm shaking a bottle of ketchup.
Yeah.
So that is my sign name, Siobhan. Now it's held with the fingers facing towards you. If you turn it the other way, it looks like the sign for wanker. So you have to be really careful. And there was a teacher at university that didn't like me, and she would sign Siobhan, and it's like, no, move your hand the other way. It's ketchup, not wanker. So that's me. I'm Siobhan because I was always putting ketchup on everything.
Right.
My husband has a very unfortunate sign name because his name is Dave, and he in the first week of uni he wasn't doing my course, but he ended up being in the same halls and being accosted by deaf people all the time. He got really drunk, and the first time he met the deaf community, he vomited everywhere. So his
Oh.
sign name is Vomit, which is like a hand coming out of your mouth, like you're being sick. So he's Dave. And the funny thing is, he's now a head teacher of a primary school, and he's got a deaf unit, and he's employed deaf staff before.
Yeah.
And I know this deaf staff member, and I was like, Dave, and she was like, what was that? I'm like, oh no, that's, and I had to explain about his sign name, and he's like a big professional and now her boss. And he just keeps saying, look, can I have a new sign name? And me and the deaf community, mostly Roger, are like, no, no, you're stuck with it.
Wow.
So think about what we do for you, Luke, because that's a letter L. It's nice. It lends itself to signing, but it's not very specific to you. What's something about your personality that could be your sign name?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose on the podcast, I'm known for rambling on and on and on, and just never
Okay.
shutting up. So it's a bit like Dave's, really, isn't it? Not vomiting, but vomiting words. There's that.
Speaky?
I don't know.
You could be like speaky, 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 speaky boy.
Speaky,
Like
speaky,
Luke,
speaky boy. This
speaky,
this
speaky,
is like
speaky boy.
the
Like a
the,
duck.
the like a duck. There we go again. So this is like, listeners, that sign that you would imagine for someone talking a lot. It's like your
Yeah.
hand is a mouth opening and closing.
Yeah. Yeah, you could do that. I mean, or if it wants to have it really like speaking, it's like by your mouth like that. Speak like Luke.
Right.
Yes, I think that
Okay.
we'll go with that. Should we go with that for Luke?
Just like, yeah, like a crab.
Like a crab. Yeah, like a ducky
Just
crab.
like a
Yeah.
duck or a crab. Yeah.
Yeah. Luke.
Okay. All right. Great. So I've got my own
Luke's
sign name.
English podcast. There we go. Yeah,
Luke's
that's great.
English podcast.
Podcast.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think you'd
So
be good at sign. You actually might take to it quite well. There's some people who really take to it like a duck to water.
there you go.
There we go. Another one. They take to it quite nicely. Dyslexic people take to it very nicely as well, actually. because they're not
Right.
very audio learners, they're visual learners. So a lot of them really kind of click with it. So you never
Yeah.
know, that might be something you could look at in the future.
Luke's English podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'd love to learn some sign language. It's really cool.
Yay.
All right, brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for that. And well, normally at this point with a guest, I would say to people, if they want to like follow you or find out more about you or listen to more of your stuff, where can people go? Do you have social media? You got your podcast? What can
Yes.
you tell my audience about?
Oh, I love your audience already. I've had a few chats with them on YouTube, so I would really love to learn more about your audience and interact with them more. Please, guys, find me on Instagram. I don't have that many followers, and I'm a comedian, so I want more followers. It's really good for my self-esteem. So at Uncle Siobhan on Instagram. So you
Okay.
can maybe type in Siobhan Dodd, but yeah, at Uncle Siobhan is my Instagram handle. Also, the podcast that Luke was a guest on episode 6 is called The Following Through Podcast. And it's all about overcoming challenges in trying circumstances, plus stories about shitting yourself. It's a lot of fun, and you get to learn more about how English people talk about poo. We have an Instagram, which is at Following Through Pod. We also have a Facebook page, The Following Through Podcast. So please check us out there. We're on Spotify, Apple, all major podcast streaming services. So it would be great if you could give us a listen and give us a follow, and we would love you forever.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Well, have a lovely rest of the day. And
Thank you. That's the sign for thank you, like a hand coming from your chin.
what's your welcome then?
Doesn't exist. That's very
What?
English. Yeah, you're welcome. It doesn't. You can do you're welcome, but it doesn't really. It doesn't really mean anything. It's like thank you. Oh, great. Just yeah.
Like, oh, great. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Thank you.
Nice
Great.
one.
Or no problem. Fine.
No problem. Nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Another language point to end on.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a lovely day, and catch up with you next time.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, listeners. So that was Siobhan Dodd talking about sign language. And to be honest, that was everything I expected it would be. I said at the beginning that I was curious to learn about sign language and how it works and stuff like that. And Siobhan told me all the things I expected she would. And so that's exactly what I wanted from the conversation. Really enjoyed that, and very interesting to learn about it. And of course, sign language, it's a language. So of course it's going to have a lot of the same features as other languages, accents and dialects and, the process of learning it and all the things that you get from, let's say, English. A lot of that is present in something like sign language as well. So very interesting. I hope that you enjoyed that and you learned a few things. If you're an interpreter, maybe from English to another language or whatever, then you might have found parallels between what you do and what Siobhan does. But as always, I'd like to read your comments. So do leave your thoughts in response to the episode. It would be nice to hear from you. What else do I want to say? Oh yeah, so there were some duck idioms and duck expressions. I can't remember the moment now at the time I record this, because since recording that conversation, I've had lunch, done a band practice, and I'm back again now to do the outro to this. But I remember there was a moment where there was an opportunity for me to come up with some duck-related jokes, right? Some duck puns or duck gags. And I think I completely failed to do it on the spot. I came up with something about a bill. I think a bill is the beak. A duck's beak is called a bill. Also, you have to pay a bill as well. It was something related to that, wasn't it? So I failed to do the duck jokes, but that's all right. But then there were a few little idioms as well. Siobhan kept adding in duck-related idioms. So we had to take to something like a duck to water. It means that you learn to do it really easily. Okay? Like it's just the most natural thing in the world. Like if you put a duck on a pond of water, it will just feel totally comfortable and at home. How did Siobhan use that? Did she say that I might be good at sign language, that maybe if I started doing sign language I might take to it like a duck to water? I think that might have been what she said. Anyway, there's that one, like a duck to water. Some other duck related idioms which perhaps didn't come up in the conversation but which I can teach you now. One of them is to be a sitting duck. If you are a sitting duck, it means you're an easy target. Okay, a sitting duck is an easy target. I don't know, like let's say you go to a stand-up comedy show and your friend says, let's sit on the front row, and you say, no, I don't want to sit on the front row. We'll be a sitting duck, meaning the comedian might make jokes about us or something like that. We'll be an easy target, a sitting duck. I suppose that comes from hunting. It's a pity to mention hunting or the hunting of birds, but I suppose that's where the expression comes from, a sitting duck. A duck that's just sitting there is obviously easy to target, isn't it? So that's a sitting duck. To take to something like a duck to water. Another one is like water off a duck's back. Like water off a duck's back. Now, have you ever seen water splashing on a duck's back? The water just rolls off the feathers, right? It just rolls off really easily because those feathers are covered in a kind of oil which makes them sort of waterproof or water resistant, and the water just rolls off the back of a duck. It rolls off the feathers. So like water off a duck's back. Normally this relates to when someone is criticised but the criticism doesn't bother them. So someone makes a criticism of this person, but the criticism doesn't really bother them. It's just like water off a duck's back. It just rolls off. Okay, so that's, it's like, oh, don't worry about him. He's not, it's like water off a duck's back. He doesn't mind. Another one is to get your ducks in a row, to get all your ducks in a row. To have all your ducks in a row, or to get all your ducks in a row. And this means that you've got everything organised, and maybe this is the sort of idiom that's used at work. It's kind of like management jargon. I thought Luca just wanted to touch base with you, just have a quick word, just to make sure we've got all our ducks in a row, which means that we both agree and see things the way that they are, that we have everything organised, everything straight, and that we understand how everything's working. Everything's organised, prepared and up to date, and we're all in agreement on it. We've got everything organised. All our ducks are in a row. Okay. And then, is that it? Sitting duck, all your ducks in a row, like water off a duck's back, and like a duck to water. Yeah, that's it. Also, Siobhan said like a duck out of water, but actually I have to correct her on that one. It's like a fish out of water. So if you're in a situation where you feel completely out of your depth, out of your comfort zone, you can say that you're like a fish out of water. Like, for example, when I went to Vietnam and I was walking down the streets of Ho Chi Minh City, didn't know how to cross the road properly, didn't really know how to get around. I was sticking out like a sore thumb. Sticking out like a sore thumb. Why is that difficult to say? I was sticking out like a sore thumb. Can you say that? I was sticking out like a sore thumb. Sticking out like a sore thumb. I felt like a fish out of water. Yes, okay. But then I go back to England and I'm walking through the streets of London, and I take to that situation like a duck to water. Okay, anyway, I thought I would just mention those at the end. It's always a good, any opportunity to teach you a couple of idioms on this podcast. But that's the end of the episode. You can find Siobhan through the channels mentioned before, her Instagram, her podcast. You'll find links on the page for this episode on my website. Thanks again to Siobhan, and check out my appearance on the Following Through podcast recently if you want to. I'll stick a link to that as well. You'll find that there as well. But otherwise, have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening or night, and stay cool, stay calm, stay collected out there in podcast land. Be lovely and excellent to each other. Okay, peace on earth and goodwill to all men. Why am I saying that? I don't know, but it's a good message. And I'll speak to you next time. But for now, it's just time to say goodbye. Bye, 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 bye.